So in this lesson, we really want to start to discuss the pre-meeting workflow. In other words, what do we really need to do before we go out to meet with our employer to present using Dynamis? All right, so this is really intended to start a discussion internally about whose role it is, and this will vary agency by agency. In some cases, there's a handoff where we might have an account manager that's actually entering in this information, but somebody else is actually going in front of the employer to present it. All right. In some cases, it might be the same person that's building it is actually going to be out there in front of the employer. But we want to talk about the steps that are involved so that we can make sure that we're in agreement internally on who's handling which portion. So at the top, we've got request plans to be quoted. So the idea behind that is that we still need to know what plans that we're going to be using with that employer. So we get the renewal, we might want to go through and select some alternates from the incumbent carrier. Maybe we've gone to market and get a pile of quotes back from different carriers. And the idea of we need to sort through there to determine what plans we're going to be using in our proposed options. All right. Next up, premium share and budget. So the idea is premium share being a part of all our plan designs, we want to make sure that we have that premium share ahead. Rather than trying to go and enter it there, it makes sense to have that premium share, that current premium share built into that employer and built into those proposed options. Now, sometimes that might include working with a budget. So if we've determined ahead of time what the budget expectation is, how is that going to fit into our presentation? All right, and a lot of times, as we'll see as we go through this session, is the idea that sometimes budgets don't come into play until we're starting to finalize what plans we want and we're looking at different contribution strategies. All right, so the next step is somebody's building out proposed plan groups with these requested plans. So we've said get these plans from Aetna, these plans from Blue Cross. So now we've got to build out, in addition to the current and renewal, any of the proposed options from the incumbent carrier and any other carriers. Now the idea is remembering that we need to organize those proposed options into offerings that we would present to the employees. Right? So in other words, we don't just put all of our proposed options into one proposed plan group, like they were going to offer all those plans. It's the idea of organizing these plans that we have now into how they would be offered. If it was a dual choice and we had currently plan 1 and 2 and we had alternate plan 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, we don't just put 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all in a plan group. We would probably create a plan group with a proposed option of 3 and 4, and another proposed plan group with 5 and 6, knowing that on the fly we can always create new plan groups, copy plan designs over, and create other combinations. But it's that idea of organizing these plans that we requested into proposed plan groups that would be offered to employees. All right, and we've seen different workflows. In some agency structures, we just have somebody putting all of the proposed options for a carrier into one plan group. And then they're leaving it to the person who's going in front of the employer to create their own proposed options from copying over plan designs out of there. And then they just go in and hide that master proposed group where all those plan designs reside. All right, so there's different ways we can accomplish that through workflow, but it's the idea of now that we have these plans, we need to get them into Dynamis, into our proposed plan groups. Now, the next step is a really important one. Create additional plan groups based on variations of those already entered. So once we've got those plans requested in these plan groups, we may want to create other variations using those same plans. In one instance, it would be similar to what we just discussed, where we have a dual choice and we've got multiple options. We might want to create other proposed plan groups with other pairings of those plans. The other part of this workflow step really speaks to the idea of what makes up a proposed option really has an expanded definition in Dynamis. So we're normally used to that whole idea where a different option normally represented a different medical or RX plan. But now that we have premium share and funding as a part of all of our plan designs, It really expands the notion of a plan design. So now a proposed plan group might be the same plans with a different contribution strategy, or the same plans with different enrollment assumptions. So again, it goes back to being able to create variations of those plans by just copying the group and making changes without necessarily using new medical and RX plans. Really, we can look at this in terms of a renewal really having its own unique conversation. When we go out to see our employers, we don't just go in and say, here's current, here's renewal, here's 20 plans, pick one. There's normally a way we walk them down that path, the way we guide them through that plan design selection process. And really what we're getting at here in this pre-meeting workflow is really organizing your employer and your proposed options in order to facilitate that specific conversation you want to have with that employer. All right, and the idea is that we don't have to get everything right. The idea is we can get together and change, and we really assume we're going to need the employer's help in terms of, getting that final premium share and those final plan designs. So really, we want to be able to create proposed plan groups to be able to have the conversations we need to specific to that employer's renewal. All right, so the next step is our plan group notes. We talked about them a little bit in the training. Now we're going to see where those plan group notes, that couple of sentence description about each plan group and what it contains, is really going to tie into how we present that information. Next is organizing your plan groups. So that they get built out, we make copies, and before we go in, we really want to order those plan groups in order to be able to have that conversation in the order we want to have. If we want to show some other carriers that aren't competitive, but we've got some similar plans and just want to show that we did our due diligence, maybe we want to move those groups up first. So that as we go through the renewal, we can start with the due diligence, show that we went to market, they weren't competitive, hide it, and keep moving through our presentation. Someone else might choose to do that at the end and move all those proposed options down to the end. The other thing to keep in mind is that we can hide plan groups too. So there's times we might create some options that might come into play, but we don't want to start out with those. We have them built, ready to go if we need to be able to introduce those into the conversation. But again, it goes into organizing that order and the content of our proposed options in order to facilitate that conversation we want to have. Right, print reports needed for meetings. We'll talk about as we go through the different reports, which ones you might make sense to take in ahead of time. All right, and then determine presentation needs. This really speaks to the idea that we're moving off of a paper environment where we could just come in with our 3-ring binders and folders. And now to really take advantage of the full capabilities of Dynamis, we're going to want to be able to use this tool with our employers. So what does that mean in terms of internet? Are we going to be able to access their Wi-Fi? Are we going to need to take our own internet connection with us? Is it going to be one person around a laptop? Are we going to be using a projector? Is it going to be their boardroom? All those things we need to realize what the logistics are so that we can go in and present in real time online. So hopefully this sets the stage on that organizational process of really preparing the employer for that renewal conversation and creating and organizing the plan groups we need to really facilitate that specific conversation that we want to have. Now in the next session, what we'll do is we'll actually go into our sample employer and walk through how these pre-meeting workflow steps might apply to an actual employer.